Welcome viewers, you're watching NewsX and I'm Vaishali Kohli. Now the spotlight is once again on the high-stake negotiations between the US and Iran. Talks that many hoped could reduce tensions in the Gulf region and possibly stabilize global energy markets. But at this moment, hopes of a breakthrough appear to be fading. Fresh reports coming out of Iran suggest that serious disagreements are threatening to derail the proposed understanding between Tehran and Washington. At the center of the dispute is one major issue: Iran's frozen financial assets. According to Iranian media reports, Tehran has made its position crystal clear. No final agreement will move forward unless the United States agrees to release part of Iran's blocked funds immediately in the very first phase of the deal. Iranian officials reportedly believe Washington has shifted positions several times during the negotiations and failed to fully honor earlier understandings reached through indirect diplomatic channels. Now, this is important because these discussions have not just involved the US and Iran directly. Several regional players, including mediators from countries in the Middle East and Pakistan, have reportedly been working quietly behind the scenes for months to keep communication alive. But despite all those efforts, mistrust between the two sides remains extremely deep. Iranian officials are signaling that they no longer want vague assurances or future promises from Washington. Instead, they're demanding concrete and verifiable action upfront. In simple terms, Tehran appears to be saying, show us the money first, then we can move forward. And that demand is becoming a major sticking point. Iran says it has learned from the past negotiations and previous sanction disputes that written commitments alone are not enough. Officials there reportedly fear that if they make concessions first, the promised financial relief may never fully arrive. And at the same time, Tehran has also emphasized that it will not compromise on what it calls its red lines during the negotiations. Meanwhile, reports from American media organizations also suggest that the deal is still far from complete. Several unresolved issues continue to block progress, especially surrounding sanctions relief, nuclear restrictions, and security arrangements connected to the Strait of Hormuz. Now, why is the Strait of Hormuz so important, viewers? Because it is one of the world's most critical oil shipping routes. A massive percentage of global oil exports passes through that narrow waterway every single day. Any disruption there immediately affects global energy prices, international shipping, and economic stability. And after months of military tensions and regional instability earlier this year, world powers have been eager to prevent any further escalation. That's why these negotiations matter far beyond Washington and Tehran. Now, let's talk about the American side. US President Donald Trump has continued to send somewhat mixed signals about the talks. At one point, Trump suggested that negotiations were progressing well and that a deal was close. But shortly afterward, he clarified that discussions were still unfinished and warned that the US would not rush into signing any agreement. In public statements, Trump has repeatedly stressed that if a deal does happen, it must fully protect American security interests. At the same time, he has also maintained pressure on Iran by keeping restrictions on Iranian shipping and trade in place while negotiations continue. One of the reported proposals currently being discussed involves Iran reopening and securing the Strait of Hormuz, while also addressing concerns over its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. However, major disagreements remain over exactly how Iran's nuclear material would be handled and what future limits would apply to its nuclear activities. And once again, this brings both sides back to the same deadlock. The United States reportedly wants Iran to first fulfill key commitments related to its nuclear program and regional security before major sanctions relief or asset releases take place. Iran, on the other hand, viewers, wants immediate financial action before taking those larger steps. So essentially, both sides are waiting for the other to move first, and that is exactly why negotiations remain so fragile. President Trump has also continued to repeat one message very strongly throughout the talks: that Iran must never be allowed to obtain nuclear weapons. That warning has remained central to Washington's negotiating position from the very beginning. Despite weeks of intense diplomacy, secret discussions and mediation efforts involving multiple countries, officials on both sides now appear much more cautious about predicting success. For now, the possibility of a final agreement is still alive, but clearly hanging by the thread. The coming days could prove critical, not only for US-Iran relations, but also for global energy security and stability across the Middle East. We'll continue tracking every major development on this story. Stay tuned to NewsX for more news and updates.